Ingeteam Power Technology, Power Grid Automation, Tutorials. Topic: Network Configuration. In this video, we will learn how to configure the Ethernet network interfaces, gateways, and other features about network configuration of the Ingepack IEDIS. For that, we will use an Ingepack DA IED with a local display as an example. First, we will access the configuration menu of the local display by entering the numeric password. Then, we will navigate to the Communication section with the arrow pad next to the display, where we will access the Network Configuration subsection. From this screen, we will be able to configure the IP addresses of the 3 Ethernet network interfaces in our IED. When clicking on any of the interfaces, the list of IP addresses configured in that interface will be displayed. If we click the Enter button below the local display, the IED will enter the Settings Edit mode, with which we will be able to either edit or remove the selected IP address from the list of IP addresses in the Ethernet interface. In this case, we will change the first IP address of the frontal Ethernet interface. In addition to editing the IP addresses, we may also add new IP addresses to any of the 3 Ethernet interfaces. For this example, we will configure a new IP address in ETH1. We must remember to press the Menu button to toggle the numeric keyboard mode on the functional keys in order to input the new IP address and subnetwork masks. The new IP address will be in a different IP range to those that were already configured in the IED. As a third possibility, we may also clear an IP address. We will do that for ETH2. Then, we will include the IP address and subnetwork mask to ETH2. Besides editing the IP addresses, we may also disable the Ethernet interfaces one by one in case we did not want to use them. When we disable an Ethernet interface, the IED will let us know that the IP configuration of that interface will be deleted. After enabling the interface back, its IP configuration will have been lost. Next, we will configure the IEDIS gateways. First, we will configure a generic gateway where the responses to traffic with unknown origin IP addresses will be sent. In this case, we may ignore the destination IP address and subnetwork mask parameters and only fill the default gateway's IP address field. The default gateway will be configured in an IP address in range of interface ETH1. Now we will configure another gateway, but in this case, its destination IP address will be a specific address. We will configure the second gateway in range of interface ETH1's second IP address, 10.167.0.100. The destination IP address will not be in range of any of the IP addresses configured in the IED. For specific destination IPs, the gateway mask must always be set to 255.255.255.255. In this case, the IP address of the gateway will be set to 10.167.0.1. In addition to gateways for specific destination IP addresses, we may also configure a gateway which has an entire range of IP addresses as a destination. We will configure one of these in the Gateway 3 slot. First, we will input the IP address of the destination subnetwork. We will set the 12.32.65.0 IP address as a destination. The subnetwork mask will be set accordingly, that is 255.255.255.0. The gateway's IP address will be set at 10.167.0.6. Furthermore, we may also configure the gateway so that the destination IPs comprise only a portion of the entire IP address range. We will configure Gateway 4 so that only half of the IP addresses in the 92.2.37.128/25 subnetwork are accessible. In this configuration, all IP addresses from the 128 onwards will be available through the gateway. The IP address of the gateway will be set at 10.167.0.10. For IEDIS with an Ethernet module with 2 Ethernet ports, for example this IEDIS ETH2 interface, we will be able to configure these two ports as PRP redundant, HSR redundant, or in switch mode in which both ports will work as one. Nonetheless, for IEDIS, which only have two single-port ETH1 and ETH2 interfaces, these interfaces will be configurable as independent ports in the so-said switch mode or in the link redundancy mode. The Energy Factory Suite tool will also let us configure the IP addresses in the interfaces of our IEDIS. We will open Pack Factory, where we will access our installation. In the toolbar, we will find the Device Detection button. To the right of the table, we will find the Change IP button. With this button, we may change an IP address, add a new IP address, and even remove an existing IP address. However, this will only be possible for the Ethernet interfaces to which our computer is connected to. After making any of the changes, we will need to send them to the IED, action for which we will need to enter a user and password. We may also configure the network interfaces of our IEDIS via their web servers. We will access the web server of our Ingepack DA IED and will head to the Maintenance tab, Communications sub-tab. There, we will click on the Network Configuration tag, where we will be able to make the same configurations as from the local display. First, configure the redundancy modes of the Ethernet modules. Second, change the IP address table. Third, change the gateway and routing configuration. Furthermore, we may also configure each interface's maximum transmission unit, which limits the size of the data packets transmitted from each interface, and even enable the slow network functioning mode in IEDIS with such feature. Lastly, we will access the web server of our IED, but with the cybersecurity features management credentials instead. We will access the Settings sub-tab inside the Cybersecurity tab and will scroll down, where we will find two blocks of settings. The first section will let us configure whether the network features can be configured locally or remotely, and which connections are considered local or remote. The second section will let us disable all the interfaces, except from that from which we are accessing the IED. Finally, we now know how to configure the Ethernet network interfaces, gateways, and other features about network configuration of the Ingepack IEDIS.
Ingeteam, electrifying a sustainable future.